I just changed my shirt. Like, this is a Zoom meeting, so more books to add to the stack. I have more books to add to the stack. Are y'all ready? I don't think you're ready. I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't think you're ready. Ready? Hey, what's up, you guys? It's your girl Ashlyn. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not, welcome back to another video. We're gonna go ahead and jump right in. Let's talk about my March reading wrap up. I haven't had a good reading month since like September of 2022. So in September of 2022, I read 11 books and then went into literally the worst reading slump of my life. So I haven't done that since, but I will say this is a good reading month. I feel like I haven't read anything or had anything to like live for in months, and all of these books, most of these books hit. I read 9 books in the month of March. That's actually so good. I haven't read that many like in a really long time. The way that I've been talking for like 20 minutes and recorded none of that. Okay, let's start over. I'm just gonna go in the order in which I read them throughout the month. We're gonna start with this book. This is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I give it a 4 stars. I am in a British literature class at school, and we're required to read this, and I wasn't mad at it. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I have the audiobook. I will say the audiobook definitely helped a lot, because I think if I would have had to read this without listening to the audiobook, I would have gotten bored. Not because the story is not interesting, just because like of how it's worded. It's not hard to listen to, but I think reading it, like if I were to zone out for a second, I would miss so much just because of like the old English. Do you get it? Does that make sense? Anyways, basically we follow Jane along her heroine's journey. There's feminism, there's romance, there's mystery, my favorite things, and there's also just like some deeper meanings and connections that resonated with me as a woman today. So you follow her along her entire journey with her only family left that absolutely despised her, going to a school, growing up there, becoming who she was there, then becoming a governess, meeting her love interest, then going away from her love interest, and then eventually finding her way back. When this was written, I think it was beautifully written, and I recommend to anyone who wants to try reading British literature, I would recommend starting with this one. That being said, this is the only British literature that I've read so far, so it's not like I have any other recommendations. I'm just saying this is easy, and it's something you could easily get into and enjoy. I feel like if you're interested in something like this, do read it. I recommend it. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, 4 stars. Next, I really don't want to talk about this book again, but since we must, Never by Jessa Hastings. I gave this book a 3 stars. I'm thinking about giving it lower. I'm not gonna lie. I just want to bump it down to 2 just because upon reflection, upon like pondering my thoughts, I think 3 stars is too good for this book. I don't know. Let's talk about it. So I give it 3 stars. It ended on a cliffhanger, so do know that there's a second book apparently. I don't think I'll read it, just because I didn't like this. It's enemies to lovers, and if you're gonna go into this knowing that you need to know the original story of Peter Pan. If you don't, you may hate Peter, or you may be thrown off a little bit. Just know the original story of Peter Pan. It's not like the Disney version. It's not fun and happy and rainbows and unicorns. It is darker, the original story, and this plays off of that darker original story. You're not supposed to like Peter. You're not supposed to love Peter. But people still do. And it's just, I know Jessa Hastings writes her characters to have flaws and, in a sense, be unlikable and make bad mistakes. I don't like that. I don't like that at all, especially because, like, that was the entire book. Was everyone just making horrible decisions, everyone making bad choices, everyone being a fucking idiot. I didn't like it at all. Peter's an idiot, Hook's an idiot, but like a pretty idiot, so like it's fine, and he's grumpy, and so like that was semi-acceptable, but not Peter. This follows Darling Girls several generations after Wendy. So this is Daphne, like her great granddaughter, maybe? I don't know. There's a couple greats in there. And Peter is the same Peter, but Hook is also a generation after Captain Hook. So the Darling Girls are kind of tied to Peter in a way. So he comes every generation, takes the Darling Girl, and goes back to Neverland. So in this book, he takes Daphne, brings her back to Neverland. She's supposed to fall in love with him and have a wonderful, amazing experience with him. And then when he decides, he takes her back to Earth, I guess. And so he brings her to Neverland, and she's just obviously too mature because she waited too long. It's not like she went when she was like 13. Like, she's grown, Peter's gotten a little older, but mentally she is older. And so right off the bat, she's like, Peter's just not what she imagined, but also everything she imagined at the same time. So that's a little confusing. And then she meets Hook, who's grumpy, who's angry, who saves her. There's just some things, especially mostly Peter, that I'm just like, that's why I say go in knowing about the original story of Peter Pan. I just looked it up on TikTok and I was like, okay, got it, cool. And I went into this knowing that I wasn't supposed to like Peter, and I still hated Peter. Basically, all the things happen, more things happen, and then it ends on a fucking cliffhanger. It ends on a cliffhanger. I'm not picking up the second book. I just decided right now that I'm not picking up the second book. I can't. The only good thing about this book is the cover. It is gorgeous. It is amazing. It is beautiful. But its contents, I loathe entirely, I think. Also, there's footnotes in here. If you don't know what a footnote is, because I did it and I had to Google it, in the middle of writing, they'll put like an asterisk in the middle of a sentence or at the end of the sentence, and at the end or at the bottom of the page, there's a corresponding asterisk, and there's more text to read, but they don't put it into the actual paragraph because it just like it interrupts the flow of the writing, if that makes sense. It makes sense. But I'm like, as many footnotes as she had in here, and there were a lot, and a lot of them were long footnote, like a whole paragraph's worth of footnotes, just like crammed at the bottom. Some of them were half a page of footnotes, and I was just like, girl, just put it in. Like, just put it into the paragraph, or don't at all. Done and dusted. 5 stars. 5 stars. 5 stars. This is amazing. This put me into my cowboy romance era. Chestnut Spring series is next. Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. These covers are also the cutest thing ever. I love them so much. Small town cowboy romance. They're in Meadowlark, Wyoming. It's enemies to lovers. It's brother's best friend. It's perfection in a book is what it is, really. So it's dual POV. It's kind of forbidden love a little bit because it's brother's best friend, and like, you know, like you get it. But basically this follows Clementine Ryder and Luke Brooks, and they grow up together, but they absolutely hate each other. She's a professional barrel racer and she moves away from home. 10 years later, she decides to move back to Meadowlark, Wyoming, and she sees Luke the first night that she's back, and they both just, you know, like that shift, like they're opinion on one another after 10 years kind of shifts and changes, and they're suddenly attracted to one another. Super short, super quick, super easy to get into. I read this in like a day. Ate it up, every word. Amazing. Also, one thing I love about some cowboy romances is that they always have some cute little southern nickname, and he calls her Sugar. Being that I'm from the South, when somebody calls you Sugar, it's just so sweet. It's just so sweet. I love it. I love it. So he calls her Sugar, and I ate up every moment of that. I love that. I love me some cowboys. 5 stars. If you haven't read it, read it. If you're thinking about reading it, read it. If this wasn't even on your radar, you've never heard of this, and this is the first time you've seen it, read it. I don't care what you're doing, where you are, who you are. Read this book. It is amazing. Immediately after that, almost, I picked up the second book in the series, Swift and Saddle. These covers are my absolute favorite. I love them so much. Now this follows Ada Hart and Weston Ryder. Weston is Emmy's brother from the first book, so they're like interconnected standalones, but they're like siblings, right? Ada is an interior designer from California, and she decides to come to town for a project that Wes is working on. He needs her help, and they decided to work together. She comes to town, and the first night there, she sees this mighty fine looking cowboy and decides to make out with him in a dark, mysterious, small town bar. And then they have like a little Cinderella moment. They're interrupted, and she runs away, and then she has to go to work the next day, meet her boss for the first time, and Wes is her boss. So as you can imagine, awkward, crazy, but the tension is still there. And I think Wes is absolutely the sweetest little cowboy ever. He's there to people please, and he will do whatever you ask of him. He is actually so sweet, and Ada's kind of the complete opposite. If you read the book, or you have read the book, you'll get what I mean when I say like sun and moon. If you have read the book, you'll kind of get it. Or like, you know, but like essentially it's, I wouldn't even say, it's like light reverse grumpy sunshine, because she's not really grumpy. She just knows that people don't always like her, you know, and they're just complete polar opposites. She wears all black and she's tatted up, and he's a golden retriever in human form. And this is amazing, and I love it. 5 stars. Now it does, no, I lied to you. 4 stars. I give it 4 stars because I do love this. I just love this one a little bit more. And when I say a little bit more, like a little bit more. Love them more. 5 stars, 4 stars. Amazing. If I could give half stars on Goodreads, this would be 4.5, 4.7. Like this would be almost a 5 stars. It just wasn't. Couldn't tell you why. It just feels right. 5 stars, 4 stars. Okay, all right. And of course, back to my little southern nicknames, he calls her Sweetheart. Sweetheart, he calls her Sweetheart, and I think that's just the cutest, most southern little thing ever. Sweetheart and Sugar. If you haven't read the series, please do. I would read anything that Lila Sage writes, I think. These are so good. Read it if you haven't. Thank you. Next, between those two, I read Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. Now this is a reread for me. I read it back in probably like 2022. Originally I had it on my Kindle, read it on my Kindle, had the audiobook, listened to it, and then I convinced one of my best friends to read it. So she got it, read it, and I was like, well, now I have the excuse to get the physical copy of this and actually annotate it and listen to the audiobook. So while she was reading it, I was listening to the audiobook and also reading like 2 other books at that time, and she loved it. I still love it. I gave this 4 stars. It's just good. Like you have fun with this book. If you don't know who Penelope Douglas is, be careful, is all I have to say. She kind of writes more taboo romances. This is Boyfriend's Dad. This is age gap. Forbidden, of course. Is there a plot? Not all that much. Is there a spice? Yes. Are you guaranteed to have a fun time? pretty much. It follows Jordan and her boyfriend, who treats her like shit, and they move into his dad's house. He doesn't have a good relationship with his dad, and then he makes some bad decisions, and his daddy, Pike Lawson, has to kick him out, and he still allows Jordan to stay because she's trying to get on her feet. She's trying to save up enough money. She's trying to get her educated. Like, she's trying to do all these things, and he just simply allows her to have a house to stay in. And so while the ex-boyfriend now is away, her and Pike just can't fight the tension anymore. And I will say the tension's good, the spice is good, the forbiddenness is good, and I think that's why I like it so much. Yeah, if you're into stuff like that, give her a read. Love it. I would recommend, only if you're into stuff like this, of course, but Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, 4 stars. Twisted by Emily McIntyre, 5 stars. Guys, this has been a really good reading month, I'm not gonna lie. 5 stars. Another 5-star books. Maybe that's why I read so much, is because they were all good. Like, I rated them highly, you know what I mean? So this is a part of the Never After series by Emily McIntyre. There's 6 books in the series. Me and my friend decided to buddy read it, and when we went to go get it, this was the only book that they had 2 of, so we thought we would start with this one. It sounded interesting. But if you don't know what that Never After series is, basically it's like a fractured fairy tale reimagining. So she takes fairy tales and then she tells it from like the villain's point of view to where the villain gets the girl. So this one follows Jasmine and Jafar, right? If you're someone that likes to check your trigger warnings, I would say definitely check them. This book, I feel like, has them, so check them if you'd like. I think they're on her website, or I'm sure you could just like Google it or look at them on TikTok. Whatever you'd like, whatever you desire. This one follows Jasmine and Jafar, or Yasmin and Julian, and it's just so good. The tension, enemies to lovers. There's a little bit of an age gap. I think it's like 13 years. This is like arranged marriage / marriage of convenience, and this is slow burn. Like, you don't get like a good spice until like the last little portion of the book. Yasmin is the only daughter of one of the richest men in the world. She's always been agreeable and listens to what her father says. He falls ill and he's going to die, unfortunately. So he just wants to make sure that his empire, his company that he's built up, is safe, as well as his daughter. So he tries to find suitors for her to make sure that she's married before he passes. That way he knows that both of his babies are safe. Julian is her father's right-hand man, almost like a son to him, and he has put blood, sweat, tears into this company. So he really he wants it, and he has that villain mentality of, I deserve it and I'm gonna get it and I'll kill anyone who he gives it to, and yada yada. Him and Yasmin eventually strike up the deal to get married so that he gets what he wants, and then Yasmin can kind of get to do whatever she wants to. But it is a slow, excruciating burn, and I loved every page of it, I would say. I give this 5 stars. I love this. I'm absolutely going to devour this entire series, I think, which is why almost immediately after I read Scarred. Okay, this is the 2nd book in the series. So good, so good. This is a fractured fairy tale reimagining about the Lion King. So this is Scar, and he finally gets his happy ending. And happy, I will say, I am okay. This is also an excruciatingly slow burn. It's forbidden love, which is one of my favorite tropes. Enemies to lovers. Check your trigger warnings for this as well. This one more so than Twisted, but definitely this one. This one's pretty heavy, I would say. So this follows Tristan Fossa, which is Scar, and Sarah. Sarah's father was killed by the king, and her and her uncle spend many years getting a plan together so that they can rightfully take the throne, but in the Fossa family line. So she goes and she's betrothed to the now new king, which would be Mufasa, I guess, Michael in this book, and she's betrothed to him, so she has to play the part and do everything. She hates all of them and she plans to eradicate this entire family line. Then she meets the scarred prince, Tristan Fossa, and they're just immediately taken by one another, but they absolutely loathe one another, which is amazing. And then, you know, throughout the story, he is the rebel king and he's planning to take the throne from his brother. She wants to kill him and his brother, and there's just so much going on, but like, it's so good. The forbidden love is like unmatched. So like, they were super secretive and met in secret places and passed each other secret notes. And you know that like Bridgerton like fingertip brush that was in here, and I almost actually combusted. Emily, girlfriend, whatever you're putting in these has to be the equivalent to crack. I gave both of these 5 stars, which scares me for the rest of the series because I'm like, either they're 5 stars or they're not. Check your trigger warnings. I recommend reading these. I would say it's not super dark, so it's like dipping your toe into dark romance. So if you're new to it, I would say try it out. If you do not like dark romance at all in any sense, don't touch these. But if you want to try it out, I would recommend these. I don't know why it took me so long to read these. Wait no longer will I. They are so good. Stop, don't move. I know you're like, okay, I'm bored, next. This is Atomic Habits by James Clear. This is a self-help book. I'm not gonna rate this one simply because it's a self-help book. This is a guide basically of how to break bad habits and form good ones, on top of further research about why and how we create habits, good or bad. And then it also tells you the psychology behind creating, breaking, and forming new or bad habits, new good or bad habits. So this is kind of where I'm at. I just kind of noticed, I was like, you know, like, it wouldn't, like, I do have, like, everyone has bad habits, and I do. So I was like, okay, and I just really enjoyed it. I like the psychology behind it. I think it was really good to be like, that makes sense, and then to also now have a guide as to like how to break these bad habits and replace them with good ones, and like what it's going to take to do all of that in a book. So I'm not going to rate it. I have no rating for it. It's just kind of, this is self-help. What I feel, how I feel, where I'm at in my life isn't going to reflect how you feel or see this book or your opinion on this book and where you're at in your life. If this is where you're at, read it, enjoy it, take it for what it is. If this is not where you're at and you feel like you don't need to change any of your habits, don't read it, because you're probably gonna be like, okay, and whatever. So that's just kind of where I'm at on that. I read The Unending Hunger by Megan A. Carney. This is for my medical anthropology class. If you don't know what medical anthropology is, low-key neither do I. But basically it's the biological and cultural study of the medical field. More specifically, I guess in my case, Western medicine, so American medicine, but we also touch on different medical systems throughout the world. So this book specifically, I'm not going to rate either just because of the content, but I did enjoy it. It did take me a while to get through just because it's like, it was just purely research based, you know, but I did like, there were, okay, let me tell you what it's about first before I give you my opinion. The Unending Hunger is about food insecurity, but more specifically food insecurity in Latino or Hispanic households in California. It focuses specifically on women who have migrated from either Mexico or anywhere in Central America to the US in California, and how food security affects their day-to-day life, on top of racial, gendered stereotypes, on top of maybe not being an actual citizen, on top, like, just there's so many things affecting that on top of having the food insecurity, and how that's kind of like affected their American experience. This is like mostly research based, and it was really well written. My favorite parts, however, was when she interviewed these women. Most of them were divorced, some of them were single parents, some of them had families back in like Mexico or Central America, but also had families here in America with them. So their stories were very touching, and then how also food insecurity affected some of their cultural beliefs as well. That was my favorite part, just hearing their stories. And then of course the author wrote all the research about this person said this and this person said that, and it was a really interesting book. If you plan on entering the medical field or anything like that, or just are interested in people's stories like this, I would recommend reading it. But that's pretty much all I have to say on that. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to write a paper on this book by Friday, and I would say I'm well prepared. It took me a while to read it, but it was mostly because of the actual research that took place. So that's it. 9 books is kind of crazy. Like, that's pretty good. I haven't had a good reading month like that in so long. That's so good. I don't think I'll be able to do that again for a while, just because like I actually had time, but like that was pretty good. That was pretty good. Okay, here we are. I loved most of these books except for like one, really, and that's where we're at. So those are the 9 books that I read in March. I'm so excited for my picking of April TBR video, and that's it. That's 9 books for the month. I think that's amazing. I'm 4 books ahead of my Goodreads schedule. That's so good. I love that. Okay. Anyways, that's it for today's video. So if you enjoyed, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.